Hello everyone. Yes, I am David, and I'm Director of UX at Grafana Labs right now, and which basically means if you are stuck somewhere and you're clicking and you're frustrated with Grafana, you can just reach out to me or open an issue, basically. And Prometheus is also a good topic. Well, I'm going to show more about this a bit later as well, not just logging. And so quickly, what I'm going to be talking about today, quick intro of Grafana, then what's new since release 5.0, then we're talking a bit about logging, and then finally a bit of an outlook of the upcoming release 6.0. So first, real quick, who here is using Grafana? Yeah, well, that's a lot of people. Yeah, that's very good. For the other people, Grafana is a dashboarding solution, but it's currently a bit on a journey from dashboarding solution to complete observability platform, and logging is going to be a big part of this. And also we're making Grafana a bit more enterprise friendly by offering a light theme, so maybe it's easier for your boss or something, it doesn't look as geeky anymore. And also we have folders for dashboards and permissions for teams. So these are all great features for, I guess, mature companies as well. And the big thing about Grafana is that we're the single pane of glass to look at data from a lot of your data sources. And Prometheus and Influx have been mentioned in other talks already today. We have a lot more. These are our most popular ones. And if those aren't enough, we can also define your own data source. You basically just have to implement those 4 functions, or mostly just the 2 top ones, on how to query something. And then whatever that returns needs to be transformed into Grafana's own table model or time series model, or now also the logs model if you want to use logging as well. And we've seen pretty wild adoption there. So there's people writing UIs for hydropower plants, for example, and they can control everything there just through clicks of buttons within Grafana, and it's all custom. And once you've set up your data sources, you can create dashboards by simply selecting a panel type and choosing your data source, and then you can quickly see graphs nicely plotted. And then once you have the graphs, you can also define alerts on them. Alerts are panel-based, and they are being evaluated on the Grafana server. And this basically makes the monitoring story complete, because you can not only just see your graphs, but you can also get alerted on it. And Grafana then acts as the adapter between your data source and the notification providers that we also support, so like Slack or PagerDuty. And another nice thing actually with the panel-based alert definitions are that you have direct manipulation, which means you can just drag the threshold, and then you can see how the threshold also relates to your historic data, for example. And what we've also seen is pretty good adoption. So quite of 6-tupled in the last 2 years. And this is the number for active daily installations. So basically, once a day, Grafana does a check if there's a new release, and we collect those numbers year on year. And I also think that the number may be a bit underreported, because probably some enterprises are blocking the update check. So quick question here again: who's still running 4.x or earlier? Then maybe later, I'm curious on what's keeping you from upgrading to 5. Time, okay, yeah, so it's a good one. So let's quickly run through maybe some motivations on what you're missing out on. So there's a new heat map panel which is quite good to display high density latency data. There's a quick example also on there on how to query for it, because you need to, for Prometheus, for example, you need to maintain the LE buckets. And what else is new? We've got new data sources. Microsoft SQL Server is now a new internal one. Then Google Stackdriver is very recent. Flux from Influx is an external data source that's still a bit beta, because it's also the language is still in Flux. And then we've added Elasticsearch alerting and a new Postgres query builder where you can just click a query together. So another thing I'm quite excited about is the provisioning story. So you can configure your dashboards and data sources not just by clicking around, but also just via code, and then which then basically means you will have a text file that you can put into version control, and you can always recover if in case anything happens or someone messes up your dashboards. And but one caveat there is if you're deploying Grafana on Kubernetes, we actually encourage the use of config maps and detect reloads there. So the last thing about the updates is that Grafana is now fully CI'd, so that means each merge to master produces a Docker image, so you can always get the new features if you just use that master tag. And if you're relying on particular releases, I encourage you to check out our Docker Hub and then just look for the concrete build that you need. Also new, we have ARM and Windows builds. Hello? Okay, can everyone still hear me? Yeah, okay, that's good. So yeah, let's get on to the new stuff. So a lot of Grafana engineering is now revolved around this graphic, which is what we think the normalized troubleshooting journey. So basically you get an alert, and then afterwards or from there will probably be a link in there to a dashboard. So you look at your dashboards to kind of zone in on where in your system the problems are, and from there you're gonna then quickly, or you want to modify some queries of the charts that you've seen to kind of validate your hypothesis. And from then on, you want to also look at the logs for your root cause analysis, and then maybe also you want to look at traces. And then hopefully at that point, you have a thorough understanding on what's going wrong, and you can roll out a fix. Yeah, so everything is going to be revolving around this picture. So Grafana is also on that journey to basically make all of these available, and today I guess I'm going to focus on the ad hoc queries and the log aggregation. So to illustrate this, currently the problem is that for the ad hoc query iteration, you're sometimes stuck on the Grafana edit view, and there you have all these distractions that pertain to the visualization, but not to the actual query. So a lot of everything that's kind of red there just gets in the way. So that's a bit annoying, and it just keeps you from like the quick query iteration. And we want to address this. And we did some wireframes, some mockups, and experimented on how this could be done. And a more query-focused view was the result of that exploration. And so this new explore area is all about ephemeral data views and quickly shareable graphs. So, and like to this, I guess, also we wanted to add logging. So this is going to be one view, so you can have your metrics and your logs side by side to basically support the story where you had your hypothesis and your query iteration, and you modified some queries, and you have an idea on where the problem could be. And then if you look closely at the query, for example, there's a Prometheus selector in there for job equals app1, and then we're going to get the logs that pertain to that job. So that's the ultimate goal. And let's quickly see how far we got. So 1, 2, 3, yeah, that works. All right, let me quickly bring this over to the other screen. So I think that's going to be good enough. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger. So there's now a new section within Grafana. It's still behind a feature flag, but it's called Explore. It brings you to this query-centric view, and the idea here is that now everything revolves around the queries. And the first integration we have is with Prometheus. So and there were 2 goals. We wanted to make it really easy to iterate quickly for professionals through the queries. But also we wanted to make it simple or easier for beginners, because Prometheus has a bit of a learning curve. And for that, for example, we added a little metrics explorer here. So there's the metrics that are on your system. They're grouped by prefix. So you can just quickly click on one, and then it'll just graph them for you. And there's some little helpers here. So the interesting ones. For example, if I run a query like this, so the total suffix, for example, if you know Prometheus a bit more, it's a counter, and so it's just numbers that increase, and the value here, this really high value, doesn't really tell me much. But we detect this, and then we say, okay, well, this should probably have a rate to make a bit more meaning out of this, and then these query hints they allow you to quickly fix the queries, and then you have more meaningful data there. This extends to other things as well. So, for example, things with buckets. So then it's obvious here. Okay, you probably don't want all the bucket results. What you actually want is a histogram. So we write out that histogram query for you. So yeah, because I think those are always a bit hard to remember. And then the tab completion has a lot more features. So for example, the history of the last queries you did, also function helpers here on what those functions mean. Yep. Okay. And then as I demoed in the split view, as I demoed earlier, there's a split view, so you can, for example, compare different installations, or like prod and dev, for example. So now I have 2 different Prometheus installations, and I compare the queries there side by side. Up is not that exciting, I guess, but yeah, maybe that's more exciting. Okay, yeah. So you can quickly see a difference. Then I can just close that again. What we also have is click to filter. So if you're familiar with the Prometheus UI, the classic one, you also have the console there, which gives you an idea on the label space that a metric supports. And here, for example, this one doesn't have that many labels, but if I wanted to break down, or maybe we just use a different one here. Let's just change over to this one. It's more exciting. See, what I just did now was I changed the data source, but it maintained the query, which is quite nice. So I can quickly also compare like that. And then here I see the label space, and I can just click on one of these here, and then it'll change the query up there for me. So that now I only look at the memory allocation for alert manager jobs. Okay, so this all works. Then I guess the new part is logging. Logging is also a new built-in data source, but on how this all works, I'm going to show a bit after. But we basically have a similar approach here to Prometheus, because the way Grafana is looking at logging streams is similar to how Prometheus looks at metrics. So everything is organized by labels. So you also have sort of jobs and apps and instances, and this is how your log streams are grouped. And then you can just query by using a selector to say, give me all the Cassandra logs, for example. And then you see a quick overview of this one currently just returns infos and warnings. So you see a bit of a distribution there. And then I can just scroll down here. And then here I have additional labels for each of those lines, right? So for example, I can then see, okay, this is the instance that this particular line came from, right? So as I would expect in a log aggregation system. And then if I want to zone in on this, I can, right? So this all works. The stage is now changed. All right. So this is how far we've got so far. Just quickly return to this. So let me just talk a bit more about the idea behind this. So the very first goal that we had for this is to just keep things simple, because we've seen other or we've personally used other solutions where a lot of things just get in the way, and it was quite complex to set up, and also they had quite a lot of storage requirements, which probably is the reason for that is that they index a lot of things, and so we wanted to have something that doesn't do this, and grappling is quite powerful in itself, so that should just be something that is supported, and we're currently approaching everything from the belief that that's the most important thing, and for the rest of the features that we want, we're going to be really careful on what we add, because we ultimately want to keep everything cost effective. So, and the problem is when you don't index anything, everything will just be one stream of log files, and that's problematic. That's problematic as well. So especially in the Kubernetes world, where you now have little independent workloads, and they all then have individual streams of data, and they all flow together, and then it's completely unclear on what came from where, and so there is something that needs to be maintained from the log streams, and for us that's the label story that is similar to Prometheus. So essentially, what we're trying to do is doing a very Prometheus-style logging solution, actually Kubernetes gets you quite far, because it does collect logs for you on the nodes, but if a node dies, you have a problem, right? Because then the logs are gone, and usually this is when you need the logs to find out what happened. So yeah, I guess the idea there is that log aggregation is a good solution after all. And the way we want to approach this is by not just being Prometheus style, but actually using the same labeling logic. So you would write YAML files in the same way as you do for Prometheus to map, for example, Kubernetes pod labels to app labels, for example, like we've seen in the example. And these are then all indexed, so that you can so that the system when you query, you can filter those streams apart. And the final architecture of the solution looks like this. You will have a logging agent that will run on your node as a daemon set, and that's going to attach itself to all the logs and to all the outputs of the pods, for example. And this basically requires you to have your apps in the 12-factor app model, where an app just spits out everything that it logs. That being said, Kubernetes won't be a strict requirement to use Grafana logging. We're just gonna, you will just have to do some more configuring to set up the agent. And then the agent is just a forwarder for the log streams to the logging service, and then the logging service then takes care of the storage. So I guess if you want to deploy it on your systems, you will have to take care of this. Or Grafana is also going to offer a hosted service for this logging as well. Yeah, so there's a lot of things to do still in there. Just around breakfast, we had some discussions on what is important to people. So deduping logic seems to be important. Then internally, we also think that what could be really powerful is a pattern matching engine that also emits time series again, which can then be fed into your Prometheus, so that based on the logs, you will have time series then. And then on those, you could then define alerts, just as you would do with any other Prometheus time series. What's also interesting, what we're thinking about is maybe triggers or webhooks on certain pattern matches. And then, yeah, we want to do everything as cost-effective as possible. So, yeah, this is all in beta. If you're really interested in this, we're gonna be releasing the OSS beta next month, actually, and I'd be curious to hear like feedback, and maybe there's some things in your current logging solution that you really care about and that you would like to see also in a slightly more cost-effective solution, but supported by Grafana. Yeah. Also, what I showed earlier for Prometheus itself, the Explorer UI is still in beta, but it's behind a feature flag, so you can enable this today if you use a recent release like 5.3. But I'm adding new features there every day. So basically, if you use the master release, you will always get the latest stuff there. And then we're hoping to release everything in February 2019. Yes. So, and then with that, let's talk a bit more about what else we're working on. Yeah, the Explorer UI needs to be a bit more refined. Also some performance improvements. That's going to be in my December. And some new interesting panels are coming up. The multi-stat panel is going to be added in addition to the single-stat panel, where you can, which basically gives you a nicer way to group single stat metrics of a certain kind and put them in relation to one another. And then there's going to be a new way to select the visualization of a panel itself, so that you don't have to decide in advance that I want a line panel, but you just want a graph panel. And then you can like quickly go through these visualizations to see which one is best for the data that you have. And then we're also going to be supporting all three major cloud providers and their exported metrics. So there's going to be internal data sources. And then another thing I'm really excited about is the GitHub story on which basically goes hand in hand with the provisioning API, where once your dashboards are provisioned through files, then what happens when you modify them, right? Like where should that change go? And yeah, there's an open issue there where we're collecting feedback right now. And another similar one is reference panels, which means you can define a panel that basically changes how, for example, a line graph should look across your organization, so that people don't go and modify their own graphs and they all don't look the same anymore and people get lost. Yeah, one last thing. GrafanaCon is happening. It's in Los Angeles. If anyone wants to come and hang out there, it's going to be at the Paramount Studios. I think it's going to be fun. It's in February. Yeah. And with that, thanks for listening. So, is there any questions?
So, are there questions in the room? So we have time for questions still left. So.
Oh, maybe one. Yeah. How do you store the logging data? Are there logging data stored inside the time series DB, or is there a way to export or forward it to other syslog machineries or systems?
Yeah. No, the short answer is no. I think the logging is going to be stored in its raw format, and the metadata, the labels, they're going to be stored in an inverted index, so we can do the quick filtering. Yeah, but I think there won't be any particular storage requirement for this later. Yeah, but also I'm not really sure if there's going to be any support for other logging data that you bring in. Yeah, so that's a bit unclear at this moment. Yeah.
Okay, more questions? Yeah.
Do you plan to support open metrics events as well?
Support what?
Open metrics events.
Open metrics events. I'm guessing we might, since we just hired Richie. So who's in the Open Metrics initiative. So yeah, I think he's going to make sure that we probably will. Yeah.
More questions? So there's still time left for them. No? Okay, then David, thank you for this interesting talk. So thanks for being here. So here's a little present for you. Thank you. So thanks.
Thank you.